Welcome to Everyday English with Annie.
Glad to be here for this one.
Yeah, so today's deep dive is, it's designed as an engaging English listening practice session, but we're tackling a deeply personal and, well, honestly, kind of a controversial question.
Which is, are you ordinary or are you special?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I mean, picture the classic movie montage, right? The protagonist starts at the absolute bottom, faces all these grueling challenges, usually set to like a upbeat 80s rock anthem.
Oh, absolutely. Always the 80s
Yeah.
rock.
And then by the end of 3 minutes, they're standing on a mountaintop with a gold medal. The screen fades to black, and society basically points at that image and says, there it is. That is the only acceptable version of a life well lived.
Right. It creates this really ruthless binary for us.
Yeah.
You're either that exceptional standout or you're just entirely invisible.
Yeah, totally. And we are pulling today's insights from a really fascinating stack of excerpts from Mark Manson's book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Feck.
It's such a grounded book.
It really is. So our mission today is to unpack why modern society pressures you, yes, you, the listener, to be this extraordinary standout. And we're going to explore how embracing being completely unapologetically average might actually be the counterintuitive secret to a happier, freer life.
Which is a tough pill to swallow for a lot of people. I mean, we really need to examine the architecture of that pressure you feel.
Yeah.
Where did this relentless drive to be amazing even come from?
Right.
And, how does it physically rewire your expectations? Why is it secretly making so many incredibly talented, capable people just absolutely miserable?
Well, to understand why we desperately crave this label of being special, we kind of have to look at how we were taught to view ourselves. And the source text introduces us to this guy named Jimmy.
Ah, Jimmy.
Yeah, Jimmy. Jimmy is, well, he's the kind of person you meet at a party and immediately want to walk away from.
Oh, definitely. Jimmy is the quintessential, just entirely delusional startup founder.
By constantly talking up his ventures, right?
Exactly. He's the guy holding court, loudly pitching a medical app he is supposedly getting angel investors for. Or he's bragging about, a charity he is allegedly keynoting next month.
But the reality is...
he's detailing blueprints for a gas pump that's guaranteed to make him a billionaire, but none of it is real.
Right, none of it. He is a professional leech. I mean, the text says he lives entirely off his family's money, spends most of his time getting high, and he maxes out company credit cards at these absurdly expensive restaurants.
All just trying to impress people who really don't care about him?
Exactly. He produces absolutely nothing of value. But the crazy part is his confidence.
That's the defining characteristic of Jimmy. It isn't his laziness, right? It's the armor of his self-confidence. He genuinely, deeply believes his own hype.
That's wild.
If someone hangs up on his pitch, he tells himself, well, they are just too small-minded to grasp his vision.
Yeah, or if a friend points out, hey, Jimmy, you haven't actually built this app you're pitching.
Right, then that friend is suddenly a jealous hater trying to bring him down.
Okay, let's unpack this because my immediate reaction is to wonder how reality hasn't completely punctured his bubble.
You'd think it would.
Right. I mean, most of us get a bad grade or fail a project, and we feel a sense of shame, or at least a need to correct course. How does someone like Jimmy maintain that bulletproof delusion?
Well, what's fascinating here is that to understand the mechanics of Jimmy's brain, we have to look back at a massive shift in psychology and education.
This was in the 1960s, right?
Yeah, starting in the 60s. Researchers noticed a correlation. Highly successful people generally reported having high self-esteem, but the fatal flaw was that they mixed up the causation.
Oh, I see.
They assumed that the high self-esteem caused the success.
So they thought, well, if we just artificially pump up everyone's self-esteem, the success will naturally follow on its own.
That was the exact policy shift. It infiltrated schools, parenting styles, corporate management.
Grade inflation.
Exactly. Massive grade inflation, so low-achieving students wouldn't feel bad about themselves. The invention of the participation trophy.
Oh, man. Children being given daily assignments to write down all the reasons they were uniquely special and destined for greatness.
Yep. The overarching cultural mantra became that merely feeling good about yourself was the ultimate baseline for a successful life.
Teaching kids to feel exceptional without earning it, it's like pumping a car tire with air but forgetting to put a wheel inside.
That's a great way to put it.
Like, it looks fully inflated and really impressive on the outside, but the second you try to drive on it, the second it hits the actual friction of the road, the whole thing just completely collapses.
Because the movement fundamentally misunderstood the psychological definition of self-worth. They were measuring self-esteem by how positively people felt about their positive achievements.
Which is easy to do.
Right. But true. Resilient self-worth is actually measured by how a person handles their negative experiences.
Oh, wow.
It's the ability to look at your flaws honestly and say, I am irresponsible with my finances and I need to fix that, or I failed that test because I just didn't study hard enough.
And Jimmy completely lacks that ability. He can't do it. He was conditioned to believe that feeling bad is a malfunction. Because he only knows how to process positive affirmation, he has to avoid his real problems entirely just to protect his ego.
So he just builds this narcissistic bubble?
Exactly. A bubble where he's always the victim of other people's lack of vision, which completely prevents him from experiencing the necessary friction that leads to actual growth.
He feels entitled to the rewards of success without actually enduring the sacrifice of the struggle.
Exactly.
So, okay, we have this internal drive to feel special from this flawed self-esteem movement, and Jimmy is insulated in his own mind. But what about the rest of us? The people who actually live in reality?
Well, reality is harsh.
The source material points out that there is this external force pouring gasoline on the fire, basically making us feel incredibly inadequate every single day.
Right. We are living under the tyranny of exceptionalism. If you map out human traits on a bell curve, statistically speaking, most of us are pretty average at the vast majority of things we do.
Right. You might be a brilliant software engineer, but a terrible cook and completely inept at public speaking.
That's me with cooking, for sure.
Right. The overwhelming majority of the human experience happens right in the humdrum, boring middle of that bell curve.
But the media ecosystem you and I interact with, it doesn't operate in the middle of the bell curve at all.
Not even close.
Our attention spans are so limited, and the internet is basically an infinite ocean of content. So the only things that can successfully pierce through all that noise are the absolute extremes.
The 99.999th percentile.
Exactly. We only see the extreme best and the extreme worst. We are fed this constant algorithmic diet of the greatest athletic feats in history, the most devastating global tragedies, billionaires, flawlessly edited models.
That's relentless.
But here's where it gets really interesting. I want to push back a little because, wait, isn't seeing greatness inspiring?
You would think so.
Like, when I watch an Olympic sprinter break a world record, or I read a biography about a tech visionary, it usually makes me want to aim higher. Why does the text argue that seeing exceptional people automatically makes us feel terrible instead of motivating us?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the issue is the scale and the frequency of the exposure.
Okay, what do you mean?
Well, 100 years ago, you only compared yourself to the 50 people in your immediate village. Being the best blacksmith in town was a very achievable goal.
Right, you could actually be the best.
But today, your brain is processing the achievements of 8 billion people simultaneously. When you are flooded with the truly extraordinary all day, every day, your brain's baseline for what constitutes a normal life becomes completely warped.
Oh, wow. So average becomes the new standard of failure.
Exactly. The dopamine receptors in our brains adjust to the extremes. Suddenly, having a decent job, a nice apartment, and a couple of good friends.
Which is historically a massive success.
Right, historically that is a huge win. But now it feels like you are drastically falling behind. Being in the middle of the pack feels like an absolute crisis.
So it drives people to cope through toxic entitlement.
Yes. Because this deluge of exceptional information makes us feel desperately insecure. We're constantly failing an impossible global test.
And the author suggests this entitlement manifests in two very different ways on opposite ends of the curve, right?
Yeah. One response is aggressive overcompensation. This is the Jimmy route. Cooking up get-rich-quick schemes, adopting a fake persona.
Basically demanding the world recognize a greatness you haven't actually earned just to escape the shame of feeling average.
Precisely. And the other extreme is what people often call the victimhood chic.
Victimhood chic, that's a strong phrase.
It is. If you realize you cannot possibly be the most exceptionally successful person in the room, well, the next best way to guarantee you are still special is to prove that you are the most uniquely victimized, oppressed, and unfairly treated person in the room.
Oh, because the extreme low end of the curve still garners attention and sympathy.
Exactly. It requires the exact same level of delusional self-aggrandizement to believe that all your problems are completely insurmountable and entirely unique to you, as it does to believe you have no problems at all.
That is wild. It's just a different flavor of entitlement.
Yep.
You're either demanding a medal for being a genius or demanding a medal for having the hardest life in history. But either way, you are demanding a medal just to avoid being ordinary.
Anything to escape the middle of that bell curve.
So, since constantly comparing ourselves to these extremes makes us miserable, we have to examine how we measure our lives. How do we judge whether our lives are a success or a failure?
It really comes down to the underlying psychology of metrics, the values we consciously or subconsciously choose to measure our self-worth against.
And the sources provide this incredible contrasting story of two rock musicians to illustrate this. Let's talk about Dave Mustaine.
Oh, this is a perfect example.
So in 1983, he was a fiercely talented young guitarist for a metal band just getting traction. And literally a couple of days before they were scheduled to record their very first album, his bandmates decided he was too erratic.
They just kicked him out.
Yeah, they woke him up, handed him a bus ticket, and kicked him out without any warning.
A profoundly humiliating experience.
Yeah.
He was forced to endure a 4-day bus ride back to Los Angeles with nothing but his guitar and his anger.
And during that agonizing bus ride, Mustaine made a vow. He decided to form a new band, and his driving metric for success was that he was going to be so massively successful that his old bandmates would see his face on TV and cry themselves to sleep with regret.
Which is quite the motivator.
He worked like a demon, formed Megadeth, and achieved an astronomical level of success. I'm talking over 25 million albums sold, massive world tours. He became an absolute legend in heavy metal.
By almost any conventional metric, fame, wealth, artistic influence, Dave Mustaine achieved the absolute peak of the mountain.
But here's the kicker. Decades later, in this very intimate, tearful interview, Mustaine admitted that he still felt like a massive failure.
Which sounds crazy to most people.
Right. And why? Because the band that kicked him out was Metallica. And Metallica went on to sell over 180 million albums and become one of the biggest musical acts in human history.
So Mustaine, despite having millions of adoring fans and more money than he could ever spend, was fundamentally miserable because of the specific metric he chose.
So what does this all mean? If Dave Mustaine had 25 million records and was miserable, are ambition and the drive to be the best actually bad for us? Should we just not try?
This raises an important question, but no, the ambition to play music or build a great band wasn't the problem. The psychological trap was the metric he attached to that ambition.
Because his metric was literally just be more successful than Metallica?
Yes, that is what psychologists refer to as an external locus of control. He tied his happiness to something entirely outside of his own hands.
It's so unstable.
Inherently unstable. Mustaine could control how hard he practiced or how many songs he wrote. He could not control how many albums Metallica sold.
Right. You just can't control the market.
When you tether your self-worth to an arbitrary comparison against another person's achievements, you are handing the keys to your happiness over to a moving target you cannot influence.
Which brings us to the second musician, Pete Best.
Yes, a totally different outcome.
Pete Best was the original drummer for the Beatles. In 1962, just days before they recorded their first record, the other members had their manager unceremoniously fire him and replace him with Ringo Starr.
And we all know what happened next. The Beatles went on to become the most recognizable faces on the planet.
And Pete Best fell into a brutal depression. I mean, he watched the men who fired him become global deities while his own projects failed. He even attempted suicide in 1968.
It was devastating for him.
But eventually, something profound shifted. Years later, he gave an interview saying he was actually happier than he ever would have been if he had stayed with the Beatles.
Which is a huge statement.
I know, and I have to ask, is Pete Best just a master of cognitive dissonance? Like, is this just sour grapes, like getting rejected from Harvard and saying, oh, I totally didn't want to go to Ivy League anyway?
It's a fair question.
How do we know he genuinely found happiness and isn't just aggressively coping with the biggest missed opportunity in history?
The evidence really lies in how his daily behavior changed based on his new metric. Sour grapes is a defense mechanism where you still desire the original metric, but pretend you don't.
Okay.
Pete Best actually shifted his locus of control inward. He realized that getting kicked out of the band forced him onto a different path where he met his wife, which led to him having children.
Oh, I see.
He consciously decided to change his metric for a successful life, from global rock superstar to being a present husband and a loving father.
He brought his metric down to reality.
Exactly. He adopted a value system based on immediate, controllable factors. You have direct control over whether you listen to your spouse or whether you show up for your kids.
But you definitely do not have control over whether 50 million strangers buy your rock album.
Right. Pete Best found actual, sustainable happiness because he stopped playing a game where the rules were dictated by the external world. He started playing a game he could actually win every single day.
Okay, so if external comparisons, the obsession with the 99th percentile, and the desperate need to be a special rock star are all part of this psychological trap, what is the practical alternative for the listener?
How do we live day to day?
Yeah, how do we navigate life without getting sucked back into that exceptionalism matrix?
The author frames the solution as learning to eat your emotional veggies.
I love this concept so much. It's like skipping the Big Mac of entitlement.
That's a great analogy.
We all want the quick, greasy high of feeling like a unique, misunderstood genius. It tastes amazing in the moment. But swallowing the broccoli of reality, admitting we are just ordinary people with ordinary problems, is what actually makes our emotional muscles grow.
Eating your emotional veggies requires accepting the incredibly bland, mundane truths of existence.
Like what?
Like internalizing the fact that your individual actions actually don't matter that much in the grand scheme of things, and making peace with the reality that the vast majority of your life will be completely boring, repetitive, and unnoteworthy.
I mean, that sounds incredibly depressing the first time you hear it. Sounds like just giving up.
It absolutely tastes bitter at first bite. Our egos naturally rebel against it. But once you actually digest that concept, it is profoundly liberating.
Liberating how?
Well, when you finally put down the exhausting backpack of needing to be the next big thing or prove your unique worth every single day, the chronic stress of feeling inadequate just begins to evaporate.
Oh, because you aren't constantly failing that impossible global test we talked about earlier.
Exactly. You're free. And the paradox here is that accepting your own mediocrity doesn't mean you stop trying.
Right. It's not an excuse to be lazy.
No, in fact, the people who become truly great do it, though, because they don't believe they are exceptional yet. They are obsessed with improvement.
They aren't, Jimmy. Jimmy thinks he's already at the finish line.
Exactly. The truly great ones operate on anti-entitlement.
Yeah.
They see their flaws clearly, they know they're ordinary, and they recognize they have massive room to grow.
So, by dropping the fragile ego and abandoning the need to be a unique snowflake, you just free up massive amounts of mental bandwidth.
So much energy.
Energy you used to spend agonizing over how you look to other people can now be used to just put your head down and do the work.
And beyond just doing the work, you free yourself up to actually experience the basic ordinary moments of life without feeling guilty.
Taking a walk without needing to track your heart rate for social media.
Yes.
Having a simple dinner with a friend without needing it to further your career. Or just sitting quietly and reading a book.
Those activities sound boring to a culture addicted to the extremes of the bell curve. But they are ordinary for a reason. They are the foundational, controllable metrics that generate real, sustainable human happiness.
They don't require an audience.
And they don't require you to be special.
Wow. Let's pull all of this together and recap the journey of this deep dive. We started with Jimmy's delusional confidence and the trap of the self-esteem movement.
Learning that true self-worth comes from handling the negative, not just celebrating the positive.
Right. And then we moved through the media's tyranny of exceptionalism, where average became a failure. We learned from the metrics of rock stars, Dave Mustaine, and Pete Best.
That ambition is fine, but external metrics will ruin you.
And finally, we arrived at the liberation of eating our emotional veggies, willingly acknowledging our mundane existence so we can appreciate the simple, controllable values that make life genuinely worth living.
It's a much healthier way to live.
So to you, the listener, the next time you are scrolling through social media, feeling the crushing weight to be a unique snowflake, take a breath. Remind yourself that it is perfectly okay to just be ordinary. It takes a massive weight off your shoulders.
Absolutely. And we want to leave you with one final, lingering question to ponder on your own. If you were to permanently give up the exhausting full-time job of proving to the world how special you are, who's the person you would actually become when nobody is watching?